Hello and welcome to episode 36 of Area Control Bros.
Welcome.
Welcome, yeah.
Today we're talking about Shadow Moon Syndicates, which is an area control game. Finally. Um,
It sure is.
Not in the typical sense. I mean, I guess in the typical sense, but it feels very different than most area control games that we play.
this is a very different one. I guess we can say that. I'll just briefly mention the designer is a guy named Jared Carmichael, New Zealand guy who does 3 minute board games, which is a huge, huge board game YouTube channel by if you're comparing it to ours. He's several magnitudes above our punching weight in the board game community. He does these like 3 minute reviews, and I think he did those reviews for a while, and then eventually parlayed that into actually designing a few games. And this is his second game. The first game is Red Dust Rebellion, which is a coin game with GMT, which is very heavy and it looks really cool. It's like sci-fi Mars coin, and I haven't played it, but I'm interested in trying it at some point. And this game came after that, and this is lighter, although still, definitely in the midweight. And I think the elevator pitch for this game was like Ethnos, but with more stuff going on, if you're familiar with Ethnos, which is like a very light set collection slash area control game with kind of an interesting card market. Um, and my wife's favorite game is Ethnos, so I was like, well, I'm kind of on the hook for this one, so I gotta get this one because I'm sure she'll like it. Came in, and this game is to call it a more complicated Ethnos would be doing a disservice to how much more complicated this is in Ethnos. There is a lot going on in this one, and I was just talking to Ben about this before we started recording, but this game is listed as a 2.33 weight on BGG, which is
Oh,
probably the biggest
what?
underestimation of weight I've ever seen on the platform.
Wait, I
Um,
didn't realize that.
yeah,
Yeah, that is insane,
two point.
man.
There's no shot that this is a 2.3. Like, there's just no way. Like, that's
Th
below.
this game's heavier than a lot of things that get rated as a 3 or even like a 3.2 maybe, you know?
I would say this is at least as heavy as Dune Imperium, and Dune Imperium, of course, is like has had a ton of votes, and it's like at a 3.0 something, I think, 3.08 it looks like, and I'd say this
Yeah.
is at least as heavy as Dune Imperium in practice. Just so that
Yeah.
people,
And that's like with all expansions on Dune Imperium even, you know, in my
yeah,
opinion.
there's definitely. I mean, if you have like all the expansions for the original Dune Imperium, there's definitely going to be like more shit on your table. Like more tracks
Yeah.
and things. But in terms of just like the gameplay, I think this is definitely a comparable way to just, Dune, Imperium. Just so that people don't get blindsided thinking this is like, oh, it's like Ethnos with like a few extra things. It's
Yeah.
like, no, this might as well be like an entirely different game.
Yeah, I mean, and to go further on the Dune Imperium Uprising is rated as a 3.53, which, I mean, Dune Imperium Uprising 3.5. I mean, I think this game is more complex, more
I
to think
mean,
about than
we
that.
do have to put in perspective that we played a lot of Dune Imperium. Um,
I
I
suppose that's true. Yeah.
I say Uprising is like a little bit simpler than base Dune with all expansions. Um, It is weird that they rated base Uprising, I guess just because they're spies. But because I think like the general anyway, that's a whole other topic to get into the relative weights
Yeah.
of the Dune games. But suffice to say, this game is heavier than the BGG weight rating would have you believe. That's all I was saying.
Yeah. This game has a lot of AP kind of choke points, like a lot of times in which like just during my turn, I'm gonna have some analysis paralysis. Because you like start with the like 6 card hand and it's like, okay, which one of these do I want to play? But like, do I want to play a different card and try to get the bottom effect of the this other card that's in my hand? And then you're also like thinking about after you've actually played the card like, okay, well then what am I doing at the like am I gonna like take one from the market at the end of my turn? Or like do I want this card that I would be putting in there to be in the other person's hand? So like I don't know, there like I think on the surface it seems like not too complicated. You're like putting discs on a board trying to get some of the like crimes that are down there, but I think there's a lot of points in which I am having to think quite a lot about what my next move is um in this game.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if you're never on autopilot in this game, whereas you know, last time I'll mention Dune Imperium, but there are plenty of times where I feel you can be on autopilot with that because a lot of the games play out in the same way. Whereas with Shadow Moon Syndicates, and this is something that I think we've all talked briefly about and is made especially true because you are pairing different faction combinations together each time you play. But the game even without the different pairing of faction combinations, would play out very differently every single time, and especially so with the faction combinations. Um, just for that alone, this game ends up being very, very thinky, even as you continue to play it, because there's, firstly, on your first few go arounds, there are so many different keywords you're going to be in your little booklet, and that'll continue to be true as you play. Um, but on top of that, just like coming up with a plan of how the hell am I going to accomplish these secret objectives that I have, and when do I want to accomplish each one? Like, because you do one per turn. And what tokens am I going to go for? And what part of the board am I going to go for? And what hand am I going to make for myself for round three? I mean, you're thinking about round three by necessity of the game's design from turn one, which is something that you can do in every game, but that often you can kind of throw your hands up and say, "Well, I'll get there when I get there."
Yeah, I mean in a very literal sense because like your hand, I guess just to briefly talk about the game structure because that's been brought up. There are 3 rounds of the game, and you basically play out your hand in each round. So you're basically, and you have a 6 card hand, I believe. So you're taking
Yeah.
18 actions in the game per player, um, not counting flipping your crime tokens. And the interesting thing is that you are able to manipulate your hand quite a bit in the first 2 rounds of the game because there is a kind of revolving card market. And by the way, can I say the card market in this game is like so much more interesting than if it were like a kind of a traditional like deck builder card market?
Mm,
Because of the way it works is you're able to replace a card in the market with a card from your hand. But this game has been designed to have so much player interaction that you have to think about like, well, this card doesn't do me any good because maybe I'm leaning into a different strategy. But what if Ben or Blake are leaning into a strategy that does involve this, and I'm giving them an incredibly valuable resource? And if that's the case, then maybe you do have an option to get rid of it without giving it to anybody, which is put it on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. But then that means what you get is random. You're just getting the top card off the deck, and you don't have the ability to choose what you're getting. And so there is a very clearly defined game design thing here, which is like you can risk giving somebody something good to get the greater defined reward that you know what you get, or you risk, or you don't, you have a kind of a zero risk situation where you get rid of something you're not going to use, but you might get something that's not useful to you either. Um, which is a really interesting thing. Like we've had many times where it's like, oh my God, I can't give this to so and so because if they have this, they don't just get to have it this round of the game, but they'll be able to put it into their sculpted 6 cards in round three. Because out of all of your cards that you played in the first 2 rounds, you're able to take 3 cards from each round, and that's your hand in round three. So you kind of have like a perfect hand of what you've done in the
yeah.
game in round three,
And they
which is
eliminate that card market in round three as well. So you really have to be
yes.
confident in this 6 card hand that you've developed. With the only real exception I can think of being the interfere mechanic.
Yes. And it's also interesting because like when you use beguile or interfere and those kinds of things that can interfere with an opponent's stack of cards that they have that they're building over the course of the turn, you're actually adding to their sort of possible selections for round six because that's going into their card
No.
pool. And so yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Ben.
Oh, well, round three. Um, but yeah, the interfere and beguile mechanics I think are very interesting, and there's a part of me that doesn't like how it interacts sometimes with the gimme kind of mechanic, which is if you have a card that you don't want to play, you can just play it face down, and then
Mm,
that will be like a wild, and that can count for like the suit of basically of the other cards that you have so you can get the bottom effect. But like there's so many times in which like I feel like in the last game we played, I was playing cards that I didn't want to like play. I would rather have played them face down to get one disc anywhere, but I had to play them because I knew I needed the symbol for the next card that I was going to play, and I knew that it would be less likely that somebody would beguile that card or like interfere with me if I just played the card face up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a funny point,
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
when you play a card face down, it's like advertising. I need a wild.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the mechanic in question here is as you play your six cards in the round, they have a top effect and a bottom effect, and you only get the bottom effect if the card you played previously either um, is face down or matches the card that you're playing now. And then I guess other exception being if it's your first card played, you have nothing below it. And
Yeah.
so as Ben's saying, you're really advertising how much you need this next bottom effect. So that's a kind of funny thing. And it's true too, because often you'll be sitting with a beguile card or a beguile token or an interfere card, interfere token, and you don't have an obvious time to do it until someone does that face down. I hadn't really thought of that, but interesting
Yeah,
point.
it does. I guess this is part of the ethnos DNA is in terms of set collection is the like the different factions that you have. You want to be building like a hand that has more of them so that you get more effects. I assume that's kind of where that like a little bit of that ethnos DNA kind of comes in. But it's very different because ethnos is just kind of like you get like a better effect the more of like the same set that you have, basically. And
Well,
also it's like
yeah.
and that's also like how you're able to actually like put stuff out.
Yeah, and
Like,
like in an ethnos, the individual cards of a race and ethnos are they're all identical except for like what color they are. And so in this game, like every single card of a faction is a unique card, much closer to like a card in like a TCG or something, or like, Forbidden Stars, there's a top effect and a bottom effect. Like these cards all do something even didn't if you weren't in that faction. And yeah, as they said, like if you playing it first in a round or on a wild, you get both effects even if you aren't really deep into that faction. And each faction has its own kind of like area on the board it's interested in operating out of or into. And it also has sort of some keywords that are kind of associated with it. And so, as Blake mentioned earlier, your nose is going to be in the little keyword magazine on your first couple plays of this game out of necessity, which is fine. But it's interesting because like what keywords you even see in the game are really going to be dependent on what mix of factions you have. So unless you're specifically curating your factions each play to see every single one, we're just doing it randomly. And there might be keywords you barely ever see. There might be ones that you're seeing every game, and that might color your perception of certain mechanics, like the ability to march your units, for instance, in sort of a traditional area control, like march from point A to point B and then kill somebody type way is actually a specific keyword, but it is not a like action you can innately perform in the game. And so if you're not playing with a faction that has March in your pool, then you're going to be thinking like, how do I move around as easily? And you'll be using ship or transfer or, using displays creatively and that kind of thing instead.
Yeah, definitely. And I think important to say when we're talking about if you're not using a particular faction, you're not playing in a particular faction, it really does come down to the cards that you draw in that hand for round one and round two, and then the cards that you're kind of filtering through picking up. Um, I think that it's pretty hard to make a successful turn three hand that isn't like one, two, or maybe like two and then like one card from a third faction. I think generally you do kind of want to stick in there. Um, but we've thought as well about like, well, maybe if you've got multiple factions that have interfere or beguile, you can set up where you're still getting your bottom effects otherwise. And there's just a lot of cool opportunity in this game to explore like different play styles. And some of that is like within factions, some of that can be mixing them, however you want to look at it.
yeah, I wonder what are the main play styles like in this game because like the object is to like score the most points, and the way you do that is either by controlling some areas, which is in the beginning is horribly inefficient unless you're controlling the spire. Like the spire is worth 3, and then everywhere else is worth 1 for the first 2 rounds. And so you're not like scoring very much off of that. You do have your secret objective, which is like a secret little like I'm gonna try to be in this specific area and that'll score me more points. But I do think that a lot of the main strategy is like the crimes that you're picking up, which is you have to like hit it's like between 3 and 5 you have to have 3 and 5 guys next to the area and then pick up one of those tokens, and that then they're worth however much guys you sacrifice to do that, and they also give you like a little power. It seems to me that those are almost always the like things that you want to go for early. Like if you're not getting any of those tokens, I'm not sure you're like going to be in contention like at all.
The sooner you get the tokens, the sooner you're able to use them and get value back, you know? So like I think especially round one, even just getting like a couple of them can be very helpful in the long run. You might be able to flip it if you don't score an objective in round one, like one half of it, then you might end up using that token 3 times over the course of the game, which, maybe that helps you win or, at least do
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and these tokens, I think it's a really interesting part of the game, because as Ben mentions, you're kind of exchanging your area control for these tokens, and so there's oftentimes there'll be little races on different parts of the board to see who can build up a big enough stack and cash in on a particularly valuable token, and it might be valuable because it is matching one of the two public objectives that are already out, and so you know it's going to be worth additional points at the end of the game, or it might be valuable because of the type of token it is. Maybe you're really looking for something that can eliminate or add or what have you. Um, but I would tend to agree that a lot of the strategy does come down to how can I like hit my secret objectives while getting the most tokens, the right tokens, the valuable tokens, while maybe getting a round or two where I'm getting the spire at the end of the round. And that can be a little bit risky because other people, that's like the one thing that everybody's going to be after is the spire. But it does come together very nicely, all these sort of contending objectives that you're kind of faced with, and it ends up being a very fun game.
Yeah.
Also interfering with your opponents
Yeah,
in the middle of all this. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and not just through the keyword either.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also comes down to a lot of like you do end up having to play your hand. It's just like the game kind of feels like, oh, I'm just gonna try to like make soup with whatever I happen to have in my fridge.
Yeah.
It's like I need to get over to the underhive, but like you know, I've got a bunch of weird stuff that maybe I can put together to like figure out how to get over there. Or like I need to get some fraud, but I can't get anywhere near the fraud. I don't know. Like I never feel very confident in any of my plays in this game. Um, like I'm having a hard time parsing what a very good turn looks like. I think occasionally I'm hitting it, but I feel like I'm doing pretty poorly in this game when we have been playing it. I'm excited to play more. I'm just trying to figure out like it's kind of a weird one because like I don't know if there is like exactly like a general strategy you can kind of go with like going
Mm,
forward. I think a lot of it is kind of in the moment, like you just kind of have to do what you think is the best play right now.
yeah.
And you need to
Yeah.
think about what your opponents are doing as well. I will say that I think that in the last game we played, I was in the position where I didn't like the soup that I could cook with my hand. And so I was the one filtering my hand constantly. Like I was just getting cards from the market, interfering with myself to like draw a new card and dump stuff. I was just like churning through that hand like crazy. And there's an opportunity cost to doing that when like you could be using things that are not interfering. But I think that the benefit, which is like having a hand that you can actually do the thing you want to do with it, is, the reward is good. And so initially I underrated on interfere, but in retrospect, I think it's actually pretty useful when you have, because it's like either you have a hand that you want to keep you can use the interfere on somebody else. Or you have a hand that you don't like and you can interfere with yourself and get something that is like literally anything that is better than the stuff that you don't want to play. Because it's like if you're in the
And you
position,
can do both, right? Because the interfere, you draw a card and then you put a card on any agent stack. And so
yeah, yeah,
sometimes it
yeah,
might be that you're putting a card on your agent stack so that you can enable the bottom row of a new card. And maybe it's even the new card you just drew.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, maybe you're taking a card out of your hand that was just total crap and you got a new one that is actually going to help you out. And you can, screw with somebody else's bottom text effects that might have been really critical to their strategy. That's Ben's kind of talking about you're just, every turn it feels like you're just trying to put together a plan. And there's so much player interaction with stuff like, screwing with your agent stack, or someone flips one of their tokens and eliminates the one key guy that you really needed because now you don't have a big enough stack to do a March 3+. You have to have a minimum amount of guys with the marches. There's all sorts of little things that can go wrong, and how are you going to make the most of it?
Yeah, I'm going to use a dime word right now. It's just like a ludo narrative, which is like the gameplay reflecting what the like story is, or like the like what you're doing. And I was thinking about this a little bit, and I was wondering if the like gameplay mirrors and makes me feel a certain way that I think the game is theme is trying to go for. And the game is Shadow Moon Syndicates. You're trying to like do heists and stuff. And I don't think that it's entirely like a dissonant.
Mm.
But this game does feel more like an abstract sort of game, like, and the theme is kind of existing alongside it. I think it succeeds a little bit at the idea of like, well, I need to put a heist together. Even the way that we're talking about it, I think is kind of fun of like, oh, I needed that guy and he got
Hmm.
killed, or like whatever.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
We need five guys to do this job.
yeah.
We had an inside guy in the spire and he's gone. He's gone. He's
Yeah.
been replaced.
There are
Yeah.
some I'm gonna agree with you and disagree with you. I agree with you that the actual moment-to-moment gameplay of the game feels very abstract, which is like there are certain mechanics, like let's just take displace for example. I don't think displace feels very like cyberpunk crime-y, like the bouncing people into like different things. But I will say that the production of the game does feel very thematic. Like the art of the game, of the cards, of the board, actually, the board looks like this weathered, like GPS device from like, 2149 or something. And
Mm.
the whole look of the game looks very cool and pulls you in. But I do agree that like the gameplay it's so thinky and abstract. It almost feels like you're playing like chess or, Go or something. With how complicated and how many ramifications some of the like random if I put this guy here, then that will result in this happening, which means that he'll come here and then bounce there. And, there's like so much crazy stuff. And like I don't think that like a criminal gang would be thinking about, 5 steps ahead or anything like that. And
Mm.
so like there is like so I'm a little bit torn on that particular front, where I do think the look of the game is like it
Yeah.
looks pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, the game looks really cool. Like the card art and all of the like production for it is like pretty rad. I don't know what the player boards are doing.
Yeah.
Like we were talking a little bit about that where it's like it kind of exists and it looks cool, but like I think even in the example they have for the setup of the game, they don't have the player boards. And you don't really need them. You kind of just have like your tokens and your stack of cards. But I don't know.
They're just kind of there so you can like put your chips on something, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's whatever.
Yeah.
I I have a
Possibly a
my
missed
yeah.
opportunity with the player boards.
I have a minor quibble, and I think that it would not work in this game. But I do think there's a version of this where some of the keywords are symbols that are readable from across the like board. Because I think a lot of the time we've been playing this like, Will's been having the upside down disadvantage and has to come over and look at the entire card market and read all of the cards in order to figure out what they're doing. Where if you had like a symbol for like burn or interfere or like some of these mechanics, and you could see that from across the table, it would be more readable for like actually being able to like figure out what your opponent is up to and what like cards in the market you would maybe actually like want to pick up. But I think that the density of keywords makes it so that having so many symbols would be completely unfeasible. Like, because there are like what, like 15, maybe 20 keywords
There
for
are a lot.
It's
like,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, yeah. And I think some of that too is that the game is so modular that a lot of the time, you won't even have all of the keywords in any given game, and they can expand it and add more keywords like they did with that little leaflet that comes in. I agree that there is something of a barrier to entry with this of having to even familiarize yourself with the keywords and what the factions do. And we've played this game a good amount. I'm still not there. Like there's a lot to digest with that, you know?
I think I would start getting a handle on it if we played with the same five factions like two or three times.
Yeah, yeah.
To like get a feel for what that game looks like and what cards I should be like going for in what
Mm,
factions. But yeah, I think I did mention when we played it last time, it feels kind of like the first play of a game almost every time I've played this game.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I wanna bounce back to this idea you were talking about, Will, where there's a little bit of an element to this game where it feels strategic in the way that saying like chess or Go might, which of course are open information games, right? Which is very different than Shadow Moon Syndicates, where the other players have a hand of cards you can't see, and then chess and Go also not random games either, right? And
No,
this
there's much
game,
more randomness in this. I meant more
oh
just in like the moves, but yeah, go ahead.
no, and I agree with that aspect of it. But we have a randomness element here, and then we also have a hidden information sort of element, right? You don't know the other person's hand. And that's always an interesting place for a board game. It's hard to do a good board game that exists in that space where it feels like you need to make these really thought out strategic um, calculating decisions, right? Where you are trying to look multiple moves ahead. But as you look each move ahead, the space is much more murky, and not just because you don't know exactly what your opponent is going to do, but because there are things that your opponent might not even know they're going to do yet, or that they don't have the access to the information yet. Um, that is one thing that it's a hard line to toe. I think Shadow Moon Syndicates does a very good job of it, but you have to be ready when you take this game out to potentially have a game where you're going to be sitting there thinking, maybe even making all the right plays and possibly still lose. Now, I think the reason I think it toes the line well is that you're going to tend to find that the random elements aren't going to be the decider in all of your games. A lot of the time, it will come down to what decisions were made and when. But you might have a game like Will was talking about with his last one, where he's having to really filter and refine his hand because he's not able to make the soup that he wants to, that sort of thing. Or you might be in a situation like what Ben's talking about, where he just wants to get rid of a card, but now he has this extra layer of thinking he has to do of like, well, I don't want to give someone else that card. He don't want to give Blake that card. And now, just by happenstance that someone else is playing in the faction and it would have a big advantage from the cards you just want to get rid of, you have like an extra layer of puzzle put upon you that maybe everyone else isn't even having to consider because if the cards they're discarding aren't what you're in, right? There are things like that come up in this, and you got to be willing to enjoy them. I think you got to be willing to say, "Well, I want to win, but I'm going to have fun whether or not I win in this one."
Yeah, it is chaotic. Very, very chaotic game would be how I describe this. I guess that is thematic though. I guess that does play into the theme, which is that everyone's trying to plan 5 moves ahead, but then, it's just pure chaos results every single turn.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Crap happens.
Yeah. I don't, it's interesting because it's like, I also don't think I would take moves against me very personally in this game. I mean, like some, I guess, well, there was a specific Beguile I was pretty pissed about, but like, I think that's the one. I think that's the most take that this gets when you're like, oh, I'm gonna like try to plan, and then somebody like puts something on your stack that just like ruins everything, and you're like, oh, great, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like I really thought I cooked on that one. And yeah.
yeah. I think that's like probably the most, but I don't know. It is abstract enough that it's like I don't know if I could like I can't take it too personally. It's not like I've played some games where it's like, oh, I've got my little guys, and now you're killing my little guys. Like you're a monster, you know?
They're not even
Like
people, they're just discs.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, they look sort of like the spaceships from Cosmic Encounter.
Yeah, they do actually.
They're not as bulbous though.
Mm. And they have like the weird colors like Ethnos did. That's another thing from the
Hmm.
Ethnos DNA is the discs themselves are really weird colors. They're like neon pink, orange, Monster Energy green. They're not
Yeah.
like normal board game faction colors, which I think is funny.
Yeah.
Um,
It does let you
yeah.
distance yourself a little bit from it, them being just kind of, and I think that goes kind of with this idea of, well, I'm looking at the board. It feels like a little like, like radar or something that I'm looking at. You don't feel like you're playing as, the guy doing the heist. You feel like you're playing as the guy planning the heist.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Should we get into ratings?
Hmm.
Uh, sure, if you guys want to. Unless is there anything you guys want to talk about more?
I'm pretty sure I'm good.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm ready.
All right, you want to take it away, Ben, since you were so eager?
Sure, yeah. Um, it's I'm still cooking a little bit on the opinion on this one, but I think it's somewhere in the 7.5 range for me. I seem to enjoy this game a good amount. Um, it might go up or down a point depending on the, future plays. I think this is one that has an asterisk next to it for me, partly because of what we've been talking about in that like it's complicated enough that I don't know. Like like that it's a little difficult to figure out whether or not like uh maybe it's like a combination of factions or like it'll click with me later on. Um, but I have the feeling that it's gonna be pretty similar, and I don't dislike the feeling that it provides. I don't dislike the experience that this game has.
Yeah.
I'm interested to keep playing it and figuring out this puzzle. So yeah, it's where I'm at.
Hmm.
Nice. Do you want to go, Will, or shall I?
I'm going way above Ben, so I guess I'll give you the safety net of being the least controversial person. I'm actually going to give this a 9. I think this is a really interesting game to me, and I think I have to give it a lot of points for how unique it is. This feels like a really different game. We've talked before on the show how like some games will feel like they're just in a kind of like a logical iterated conclusion of a certain type of game. Dune Imperium, since we were talking about earlier, is kind of the perfect example of that, where like Dune Imperium is like almost an inevitable design of like mixing worker placement and deck building and kind of ending up with the design that looks like this. This one feels like a human being made this thing, and it's got flaws and it's not perfect and all that, but I think that it's like this feels like a really special game actually to me. Um, in the sense that like there's just if you wanted to play this game, I don't think there's any substitute. There's not like a let's play the other game that's just like this but a little bit different, which happens so often in sort of modern board gaming. I think this is like the only game that is doing this exact sort of thing. And that's I got to give it some points for that. And I think maybe more importantly, I think I might also have a better opinion of the game than Ben because Ben has been struck by more non-fortuitous occurrences in the game than me.
I I also it's very centered on cards, and I am not the best at judging the value of like any given card against other
That's true.
cards.
It's the second card game in a row, and Ben is not our designated card game representative guy. So unfortunately, Ben has had to suffer through our card game extravagances. But I really do think this is a really cool game, and especially for a new designer, like this is his second game. I think this is pretty exceptional. Like this doesn't feel like a rookie effort or anything like that. Um, I guess just to finish off my thoughts on it, I think I might prefer this game to Dune Imperium, but it's very close because I think this game does not feel solved at all. Maybe that's part of it. Dune Imperium to me, and maybe this is part of it, like how a lot of people that are in this hobby will have played a lot of Dune at this point. I feel like Dune is very by the book for me at this point. Like I kind of like, okay, this is the strategy that's open, so I'm going to do this. This game feels like this wide open, like wilderness of like I could do anything, and obviously you're limited by like your hand and what you're drawing, but it feels like so many different possibilities can exist depending on the mix of factions. So I might kind of cool off on this over time, but I'll send out the hot take now, and then we'll see how it ages at the end of the year.
And I might warm up to it, like I
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. No, I think both those perspectives make a lot of sense. I'm definitely in the middle here. And to be honest, as I'm talking now, I don't 100% know if I want to give it an 8 or an 8.5. That's kind of where I'm at, is between those. So let me talk for a second and I'll convince myself, I'm sure. One thing I want to say, going a little bit further into that idea of, hey, this game produces this feeling of like, hey, there's a lot of really strategic, long-term planning that I need to do. And oftentimes those plans just get scrapped from turn to turn. And then I'm coming back to it and having to make those plans again. This is a game that if you're not ready to play that, it's going to be exhausting for you, you know? And I think that it helps me a little bit with this one. I do think I'm really good at assessing different cards. And when Ben's talking about that with the cards, where you have to, really be able to look at a card and say, well, which one is the best card in this situation? You're doing that every single turn. And it's not like a game where you're seeing the same cards between every game, and then you're learning which ones are good. And even the ones that you've seen before maybe are better or worse in certain situations. I mean, you are constantly being asked to consider things in this game. And frankly, it's not a game that I would really, I don't think I would want to play this game twice in a row, right?
I
Like,
agree. Yeah, it's a brain burner for sure.
hmm and that feeling of like, oh, I have this strategy and this strategy might, just get scrapped between turns. And it might be inconsequential based on some amount of randomness. Um, that's one thing that I see in like Twilight Imperium, for example, which is a very, very long game and does have these moments of, you can do all the planning in the world and then something goes wrong or the wrong agenda comes out or this or that. I don't tend to like Twilight Imperium as much as these two guys, and it's for that very reason. I like both of you could see my rating changing a little bit on this one, depending on how that feeling sits with me. But I do feel like it does a lot of things right, and it ends up being very successful despite having some of these, um, like random elements mixed with a lot of deep strategic thinking that I don't tend to like with some other games. I think I want to give it an 8.5 just because I think the design does really well in that space. Um, yeah. And I do agree with the idea that there's not really much else like this, you know? Dune Imperium's a natural conclusion of, oh, deck building and worker placement. Well, it came out right at the same time as Lost Ruins of Arnak, which same deal, and everybody was talking then, oh, which do you prefer? You're not going to have that type of conversation with Shadow Moon Syndicates. It really is one of a kind. And if nothing else, it's interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of wish this game got a retail release. I think it would be more popular. I feel like this game would be like maybe like really a big thing if it had gotten retail and not just crowdfunding, but it is what it is.
Maybe it's hard to say with the board game community.
That's true. All
Well,
right. Well,
that's
that's it
it.
for this